In many applications, we often require the user to upload a file either for identification purposes or probably for reporting or as attachment in case of emails. But the question is, how do we make sure that the file uploaded by the user does not pose a security threat to our system later on? That is where ClamAV comes into place. ClamAV is an open source antivirus toolkit designed especially for scanning of files and brought to you by Cisco Inc. And that has a very rich data set of potential threats that you can find in a file. And something very interesting about ClamAV is that it has very interesting features, among which it scans quickly. It can be used to scan compressed files and archives, and it has a very long list of file extension it support, be it images, various Word files, PDF, and much more. You can find much more information about ClamAV by going to clamav.net. I will drop the link to ClamAV in the description below, so check it out. And that is it. ClamAV is a very rich, has a very rich data set, and is very useful if you want to scan files and make sure that the files the user upload is safe to be used in your system. So the question is, how do we use ClamAV? How do we make use of ClamAV together with a Spring Boot project, right? So the first thing is to make sure that you have ClamAV running in your environment, and the easiest way to do so is by using Docker, and you can easily have that by going to hub.docker.net and you search for ClamAV. It will bring you to this page where you can see how you can pull the ClamAV image. As for me, I'm using Docker Desktop, and I've already pulled the ClamAV image. I've already created my container, and I've allowed it to be run on the port 3310. That is the default port for ClamAV. So I will just run the container in order to show you what happens next, right? So once I run my container, you will see that in the terminal, in the logs file, in the logs, you'll find out that we are starting fresh clam and ClamAV, right? Fresh clam is the tool in the container required to update the data set of ClamAV in order to make sure that the data set, the virus data set found in the container is the most updated version. And one thing I want to point out is that ClamAV takes some time to start, right? So you just need to be patient. Once you start the container, you just have to wait probably a minute before a ClamAV is fully started. So I'll just fast forward the video and we'll continue once ClamAV has started. Now ClamAV has started, and you can see it from here. Socket found, ClamAV started. Let me show you something. I will go to my terminal and I will say PS in order to see the processes running, and you'll find out that you have fresh clam. As I told you earlier, is used to update the database of ClamAV, and you have ClamD. ClamD is actually the process in our container that scans the file, whether it's a local scan or it's a remote scan. Another thing we need to note about ClamAV is that in the container, we can modify the configurations of ClamAV by going to etc/clamav/clamdconf, and this file contains all the configurations needed in case probably your infrastructure has something specific. You need to change the ClamAV configuration to suit your context, so you have to come to clamd.conf and modify whatever configuration you think you have to modify. Probably you want to change how ClamAV works, you want to change some properties, or the port, for example, you can change it directly inside the clamd.conf. Now let me go back to now our ClamAV instance is running, and the next question is, how do we make use of ClamAV in our Spring Boot project, right? Before we move into our code, I want to give credit, right, to someone. He's called Gupta Raghumadan. He is actually this video is actually based on his blog post, right? So I saw his code, it was interesting, and I refactored the code and optimize it and make it into a full-fledged Spring Boot application, right? So I want to give credit to Gupta for his great work, and I will drop the link to his blog in the comment section below, right? So let me go to our IntelliJ in order to show you how to use ClamAV in a Spring Boot application. Also, before we continue, I've dropped the link to this code, the GitHub link to this code, so that you can pull and follow up directly with me. So I suggest you pull the code from the GitHub link in the comment section below. So check it out and pull so that we can follow it together. And once it's done, you'll find out that we have a number of packages, among which ClamAV, right? The command controller, DTOs, and this and two exceptions. This ClamAV exception and the global handler exception. And now we have our properties file. So I'll start by showing the content of the properties file. So this is our properties file. It contains the server port, the name of the application, the ClamAV host, that is the link where our host, where we have ClamAV running from. For our case is localhost. The port, right? ClamAV is running on our host is running on the port 3310 because we map 3310 to the internal port of the container. And this is a timeout, right? This is the length. This is very important because right now in our container, this property, the property called the stream max length is I think it's 25 megabyte. That is, ClamAV can just receive data in a byte array of maximum size 25 megabytes. So while reading data from our file, we need to put it in byte array of 25 megabyte, because if you supersede this size, you will have an error. So in my case, I just put 20 megabyte, even though the maximum size is 25. And the feedback messages, you have this, so you can change it to whatever suits your case. In case we have an error, probably will tell you that it's impossible to scan your file, probably because the ClamAV is not reachable. And in case we suspect that your file is infected, then we return a message called saying that the file is suspected to be infected, right? Now let's see what we have in a ClamAV package. The first thing I want to show you guys is the ClamAV client. ClamAV client is simply a component where we make use of the host defined in a properties file, make use of the port, the timeout, right, and the stream max length, right. And the first thing I want to show you guys is the ping method we have right here. The ping method does something which checks if ClamAV host is up and running or not, right. So in order to do that, we send this information to ClamAV, and ClamAV will respond to us with a pong if ClamAV is already running, right. And also, one thing I want to emphasize is that ClamAV container may be up, but the ClamAV process in the container is not yet running, right? That's why when I was starting the container, I told you that you have to wait probably a minute later for the ClamAV process to start in the container. So this method checks if the container is reachable, for example, first, and if the ClamAV process in the container is also running. Now, the second method I want to show in this class is the ClamAV the scanner, actually. So we take in input. We have an input stream here, right? We create a socket, create a buffer output stream. So the first thing we need to send to ClamAV is this Z input stream to tell ClamAV that the data we are about to send you is for you to scan and tell us if it's safe to be used or not, right? And that's why we send this Z input stream, followed by we create an array, a byte array with the stream max length. Remember that in my current container is 25 megabyte. In order to check the size, you can just go to the ClamAV container and go into etc/clamav/clamd.conf in order to see probably the size, the stream max length size, right? That is this how we read data from our input stream. We pass it to the read data, pass it to our array, and check the size. So in order to do that, we send first of all send the size of data found in our array. This is how we get the size. And we'll send this size and we send the data. This is how we send it. When we finish reading the content of our input stream, that is, we finish reading the content of the file. Now we send this information informing ClamAV that this is the end of our file, and we flush out to make sure that all data is being sent to the destination. So once ClamAV now respond, we check the reply with this method. We use this method in order to check the reply. So let me show the check reply method. So we get data, we get our data byte array, we convert the byte array to a string and check. So if our file is safe to be used, then the response from ClamAV will contain okay. But if the file is suspicious, right, then the response from ClamAV you will find in found in the ClamAV response. Now we'll have a way to convert the response from ClamAV into something our program can easily understand. So that's why we use now the ClamAV scan status. It's just an enum where we have okay, various, and fail, right? So let me come back here. If the file is okay to be used, then we return this okay. But if a virus is found, so if we are found here, then we return the status of virus. Well, now we return fail in a case where probably we are scanning, right? And that is, we are scanning and there's an error occurred. If an error occurred, then we will return fail. Let me show you this where we use fail, for example. This is where we use fail, but I'll come back to it in a few minutes. Let me show you first of all how we use the ClamAV scanner helper. Now in our scanner helper is also a component where we've imported the messages, right? The message in case we fail, in case an error occurred, we are unable to reach the ClamAV host, or probably the ClamAV process in the host is not running, or in case we have, in case the file we are scanning is suspicious, then we return this message. So we have in this file we have this method first of all that checks if ClamAV is running, and the second one is this method check if virus. So check if virus takes in a multipath file, right? We take in a multipath file, we read, you get the data from the multipath file as a byte array, and we pass it to the process status. Or we can also receive our file as a resource. So if you get a resource, we can convert the resource to a file, right? Read data from the file and now pass it to the check if virus, right? And now pass it to check if virus, and based on the result, we'll be able to process the status of the result. So the important method here is the check if virus. So let me show you the check if virus. So check if virus receive a byte array and pass this byte array to the method we just saw earlier found in the ClamAV client, to the scan method, right? To the scan method. The scan method now takes in a byte array, converts a byte array to an input stream, and now pass the input stream to the scan method found in this file. So to the scan method found here. Now this is the input stream. So we just saw this is the method we saw earlier. So now the input stream is read and sent to the ClamAV host, and the result is processed. So let's come back to our scan helper. So this is the data. So once the data is scanned, right, now the enum is returned. For example, in this case where we have a multipath file, the enum is returned. Now the data is processed in this process status. We can either throw an exception depending on what we want to do. We can either throw an exception in case the file is not safe, in case the file is suspicious, or we can just return a boolean telling the caller that that the file is not safe to be used. So now let me show you now the controller. We have a file scanner. The file scanner is our controller, and the request mapping is scanner. The request mapping has value scanner, and the value produced from our controller will always be a JSON. That's why we have produces JSON. In our controller, we import the scanner helper, and in this controller contains two endpoints. The first one is a scanner slash status that checks if, right, that checks if our ClamAV instance is up and running, that if it can be used, if it's usable, right? And the second endpoint is actually used to receive a file and scan it and send back the result to the caller. Note that what we are trying to do right now is a remote file scan, because the instance running the application may not be the same instance having the ClamAV host, even though in my case we have both the application and the ClamAV host running on the same machine, on the same PC. But what we're trying to do is a remote scan, because you may have a case where both systems, both the client and the scanner, as the ClamAV instance, may not be running on the same host, right? Yes. So we receive a file, as I said earlier, and we pass in to the scan helper. The scan helper has a method that can receive a multipath file. So it scans a multipath file, and if it's suspected, it returns a message. If it's suspected, it returns fail. But if it's not, if a file is okay to be used, it returns success, right? You can check the code in order to find more information about it. It's easy. So now let's run our application in order to see the results, right? So I will just say play. Our application will run very soon. Now our application is running, and I will use the HTTP client in order to see how to call our endpoints. So this is my HTTP client right here. So this is my HTTP client right here, and I can, let me delete this guy, and I can call this in order to find out if my ClamAV host is running or not. So this is check this health. So it returns 1, telling me that okay, ClamAV is okay, it can be used. So if I go to the logs, you'll find out that the status returned by ClamAV is Pong, right? Pong. Okay, let me open the ClamAV client. Let me go to the ping, right? So data coming from ClamAV, we log it right here, and you can find out that this is the data that was returned by ClamAV. ClamAV returned us Pong. That's why here we check if the data coming from ClamAV contains Pong. If it contains Pong, then we know that our instance is running and it can be used. So back to our HTTP client, that's why we have ERC1 saying that okay, everything's fine and the message is Pong. Now, how do we send a request to scan a file? I will send a request to scan a file with our HTTP client. You can feel free to use Postman, for example. I just find it for me it's just easier to use the HTTP client, but you can use Postman. It's not important what HTTP client you are using. So I'm just using the integrated HTTP client found in IntelliJ, and this is how I'm going to call my endpoint. This is, remember that it's a post request. This is a content type, is a multipath, it's a form, right? And this is how we actually send a file with the HTTP client. So now I will call this endpoint. This is my file. My file is found at this my file is found at this location in my PC, right? This is how you pass a file you with the integrated HTTP, with an integrated HTTP client in IntelliJ. So I'll just play it, and it returns okay. So it means that my file is safe and there's nothing wrong with this file. This file is safe to be used in my system, right? So if I go back to the logs, you'll find out that this is a message returned by ClamAV telling us, okay. So let me go back to the ClamAV client, go to the scan method, to the scan method, no, check reply, sorry. Let me go to the check reply, right? Check reply, this is where we log the response from ClamAV. So remember that we receive a byte array, we convert the byte array to a string, and now we log the information coming from ClamAV. And you can find out that this is a response from ClamAV that contains okay. That's why the status send was this enum okay, right? So this is how you can check and make sure that the files imported by the users into your system are safe to be used and does not pose a security threat to your system. So tell us what you think about it. Tell us what you think about the system, about ClamAV. Tell us what you think about our small demo. If you have any questions, drop it in the comment section below, and we'll be happy to get back to you and to try as much as possible to answer to your question. So thanks for watching. Subscribe if you like, share, and see you soon.